Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, the first line right at the top of the Amud. Continue on darshaning the Parsha of Paradum. As we learned before, as we said previously, that the whole Parsha is Mashma Maitzim Yad Mashma or Mashma Mela. That some of the psukim are the reverse of what was mentioned before, that the previous pasuk is referring to in one situation, the next pasuk is in a reverse situation, and some of the psukim are consistent, are talking in the same scenario. So continue on darshaning the psukim of the Parsha of Paradum. The Torah says, "V'shachat oisa," so it says, you shecht it. What's the meat of it? Shlo yishchut acheres imo, that you should not shecht another para with it. It should be the only one that you shecht at that time. Lefanav, the Torah says, lefanav, before him. It says, "V'shachat oisa lefanav." What are we darshan from before him? So l'ram shlo yasech daitim. We learned previously, Machlekes Rav and Shmuel, is the shlit kosher bizarre or not? According to Rav, it's not kosher bizarre. So what does that mean? That teaches you shelo yasiach daitam mimena. It means that he cannot have hesach hadas. He cannot divert his attention. He has to be shomerit, that it doesn't come tomei. He cannot have hesach hadas. But l'shmuel sheizar sheichet ve'lo zaroya. But according to Shmuel, who says that it's kosher bizarre, the lefanav is telling you this din is dafka telling you this din, that it's lefanav, that he doesn't have to shecht it, it's shechted before him. That zar can be sheched, and the alazar roya, it's shechted before him. So this is the machlekes over here. According to Shmuel, this is the source that it does not have to be done by the kayin, by alazar. It can be done lefanav. It can be done with a zar. The Torah continues, "V'lakach alazar kain midama betzba." It says alazar kain shall take the blood with his finger. So why does it say elazar? Why does it have to stress that it's done with elazar? Lishmuel lahadur le'elazar. According to Shmuel, it's now to restore it, to bring it back to elazar. So again, we see the Torah. This is an example of that. It's ma'amaitzi miyad maitzi. So the previous, the shachat, is telling you that it can be done with a zar. Now it's bringing it back, and this pasuk says alazar, v'lakach alazar, that sladur la'alazar, that he has to do this, that he has to do v'lakach, he has to take it and sprinkle the blood. So that's according to Rav. That's according to Shmuel. And l'Shmuel ladur la'alazar. L'Rav, according to Rav, who says that the shchita has to be done with a lazar, so it can't be to restore it to a lazar. L'Rav have a miyut achar miyut. It's another miyut after another miyut. It says a lazar, which is another miyut. We already were talking before that it has to be davka done with a lazar. It's again another miyut only with a lazar. That means miyut achar miyut elo l'rabas. So a double miyut is l'rabas. Da filo kayin hedget. That even a kayin hedget can do the receiving and the sprinkling of the blood. So again, according to Rav, it's opposite from before. It's the previous one is that the shchita has to be done by lazar, and here the lokach is even a kohen hedjem. Then the Torah says, "Lokach hakayin eitz eretz ve'ezav v'shnei tolas." It says the kayin takes it. Why does the Torah have to say kayin? We're talking here in the context of a kayin. L'Shmuel da'afilu b'kayin hedjet. According to Shmuel, who says that previously we were talking that the lokach is talking about a lazar. Here it says kayin to tell you it doesn't have to be a lazar. It's a kayin, even a kayin hedjet. The Rav, according to Rav, who said the previous pasuk is talking about a kohen hedget, l'Rav itzrach. According to Rav, you need for the following reason: because salka daitachamina came to love go for the paraninu loyli boy kohen. I might think that over here, since it's not something which is done to the para itself, it's the peripherals, it's the eitz eretz ve'ezav v'shnei tolas. You might think that in this case you don't need a kohen, kamash malan. That's why it says the kayin. Then it says v'chibes begad of a kain. It says v'chibes begad of a kain, that the kain shall wash his clothing. So that tells you b'kihuna. That tells you, that teaches you over here that it has to be b'kihuna. That everything that he does over here, the services that he does over here, has to be with the big day kahuna. It has to be dafka with the big day kahuna. V'tomei kohen ad ha'erev, and it says v'tomei ha'kohen ad ha'erev, that the kohen is tomei until the evening. Why does it have to say a kohen? So it tells you kohen b'kihuna l'dairis. It tells you that kohen b'kihuna, that also over here to teach you that it's b'kihuna, where he's wearing his big kahuna, and it's teaching you that for dairis, for future generations, also that is required. It's required for future generations as well. So therefore, we see over here that all these avodas have to be done with a big kahuna. Therefore, the Tzais Shalom says that, according to Rav, who says that you need for the shlit of the par, you also need a kain. It's not kosher b'zar. Therefore, he has to also, we should apply there as well and say that it has to be dafka with the big day kahuna. So, therefore, we say that v'tomei kohen ad erev kohen b'kihuna l'dairis. In fact, the Gemara hanich lamad amar l'dairis b'kohen hedge shapir. Well, that's fine that you need this limud to teach me that b'dairis future generations it has to be b'big day kahuna if you hold that the daira is b'kohen hedget, that it's b'kohen hedget. Meaning, we had a drasha previously that it's a shachad al-lazar, that the first paraduma was done by lazar. Then that means the first paraduma. For future generations, it's not davka with Elazar. It's not done with Elazar. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that in future generations, even a kohen hedget is sufficient? Then we understand. In future generations, then you don't need a sgan kohen gadol. You don't need a lazar. There's even a kohen hedget. You might think that you don't need big day kahuna. It teaches you that you do need big day kahuna. Then we understand the drasha. But if you say that the drasha is no, that the first paraduma is a lazar, but in subsequent ones, future generations are kohen gadol, then why do you need this drasha? But according to the one who says that in the first paraduma was a lazar, but subsequent ones is the kohen gadol. Now, why would you need this drasha to require big day kahuna? Hashta kohen gadol bin hashta, and that's the way the Ritva explains it. Hashta, that you need a kohen gadol. For instance, the shlit, you need a kohen gadol. So therefore, hashta kohen gadol v'yinan b'kihuna mibaya. Other parts of the avoda of the paraduma, now even if you don't need a kohen gadol, but if you see that some halakim, some parts, you need the shchita, you need a kohen gadol, then other halakim, which you don't need a kohen gadol, a kohen hedget would be sufficient, but it would be unreasonable to say that you go, the shchita you'd need a kohen gadol, and avoda you need a kohen gadol with big day kahuna. And to say that other halakim, other parts of it, that you don't even need big day kahuna, then you would be going down from two levels from the shchita with the kohen gadol to big day kahuna. Would you have a havmina to say that another chelik of it would be a kohen hedget without big day kahuna? We wouldn't say that. Where it says in Milsa the Asiba Kal V'Chaimer Tarach V'Kasav L'Kra. Even though you would say in a Kal V'Chaimer, but nevertheless the Torah sometimes it says explicitly something that you could have learned from a Kal V'Chaimer. The Torah says it, and in any event, so as to a greater clarity, the Torah speaks it out in any event. So therefore, that's coming to teach you this as well, even though we could have learned it out from a Kal V'Chaimer. The Torah continues, V'osav Yishtar es Efer HaPor V'Hiniyah. It says that V'osav Yishtar, a man who's tar, he gathers up the ashes of the Paraduma and he places it outside the Machna and the Makom Tor. So it says V'osav Ish Lahachsher Azar. That's be Machsher Azar. A non-Kohen is allowed to do it. Tor Lahachsher Isha. And Tor doesn't have to say Tor. It would be unnecessary to say Tor, because we know that the Paraduma is called a Chatas. The Rashi explains it's Chatas Karyachmanis. Since it's called a Chatas, it has to be Tor. So why does it say Tor? And anyone who's Tor, L'Hachsher Seisha, says V'hiniach, the Torah says V'hiniach, and he places it outside the camp, Mishiyesh Boidas Laniach. That's only a person who has das laniach. Yotzach hereshayt v'katan, that excludes a hereshayt v'katan she'em bem das laniach, that they don't have das laniach. The way the Mishnah Krayers explains it is that it says that they gather it up and they put it in a mokum tor. So therefore, it needs somebody that has das laniach to make sure that it's tor. So therefore, it has to be done by a bardas, and that excludes a hereshayt v'katan. Then the Torah says that they take for the person who's tamei, the ashes of the paraduma, and they put it in the mayim chaim, in the waters of spring water, in a kli, in a vessel. Sanan Hasam, we learned Kakol Shem Lekadesh. Everyone who's Torah is kosher to be mekadesh, to mix the water with the ashes. Chutz mecher shlit v'katan, with exception of cher shlit v'katan. Rav Yehuda machshe b'katan u'poisel b'isha. Rav Yehuda says that katan is kosher, but an isha is posel, and he's poisel b'isha u'b'androginus and an androginus. But he's machshe with a katan. So we have a machlekes Tanna Kama and Rav Yehuda. Is a katan kosher? And the Tanna Kama says that he's not, but an isha and androginus is, and Rav Yehuda is machshe b'katan poisel b'ishma androginus. So my time is the Rabbanon. What's the reason for the Tanna Kama? Dirshu, because the pasuk says v'lochol atome me'afres v'zachatas. They take for the person who's tamei some of the ashes of the chatas, and they put it in the mayim chaim in a kli. Hanach the pasuk ba'asifa pasuk b'kiddush. So it says they. So it says v'lochu. So it means referring to the ones that were mentioned previously, that they. So therefore, the ones that were apostle ba'asifa are apostle for kiddush, and therefore the ones that are apostle ba'asifa, therefore they're apostle of kiddush. And v'hanach ta'achshala ba'asifa, achshala b'kiddush, and the ones that are kosher for the siva kaddish are kosher for kiddush, and therefore we learned out that since it says they, it's referring to the same type of people, and therefore in the same category. And therefore, since we excluded acher shveit v'katan by the sifa, we exclude acher shveit v'katan by the kiddush. That's the time of the Tanna Kama. Rav Yehuda says no. Im kain lemakra v'lakach. If that's the case, the Torah should say v'lakach in the singular, because by the asifa it says v'lakach ishtar. It says v'lakach. So if it's a continuation, it should say in the same manner, in the same expression as said before. It should say v'lakach. My v'lakchu. What does it mean when it say they? Means not feel a katan, the pasal chasam hachli kosher. Not even a katan which is pasul there by the asif over here by the kiddush it's kosher. Isha menale. Now how does he know that a woman? That he says that a woman is not qualified because it says v'nosan v'loy v'nosna. It says it in the Lashon Zachar, in the masculine, v'nosan v'loy nosna, and it says therefore Lashon Zachar, not Lashon Nekeva. Taisus points out that even though normally we say the Torah speaks Lashon Zachar, it doesn't mean Dafka Zachar. That's the general way that the Torah talks. But over here, since it makes a point, it switches from V'lakach to Lakhu, and to tell you Dafka, therefore the Lashon of Zachar is also Dafka, and therefore it is Dafka a man and not a woman, V'nosan v'loy v'nosna, and he puts it Lashon of Zachar, not a Lashon of Keva. V'Rabbanan, the Rabbanan say, Ikas Rachman of Lakach v'Nosan. If it says in the Lakach v'Nosan, then I would have said Havamina ad Shakal Chad v'Yav Chad. I would have thought that it's only kosher if one person takes the ash and the same person puts it in the kli. Therefore, Kasam Rachman v'Lakchu. It says v'Lakchu, not to tell you that it's a different type of person. It's the same type of person that is by the asifa, that's by the kiddush, but it's telling you that it doesn't have to be done by two. It doesn't have to be done rather by one. It's done even by two. V'ikos of Rachman of V'lakchu v'Nosnu, and if it only said in both cases V'lakchu v'Nosnu, Havamina ad Deshakli Trei v'Yavi Trei, I would think you need dafka too by both. Therefore, kos Rachman of V'lakchu v'Nosan, and therefore it says V'lakchu v'Nosan. It says they take and they place it to tell you that fila shakli trei v'Yav, to tell you that it doesn't matter even if two take and one puts in it, it's also kosher. Continue on with the pasuk. It says v'lakach ezav v'tavel b'mayim ishtar. They take the ezav and they dip it in the water. Ishtar. So it says ish. What's the emphasis on ish l'Rabbanan? Ish l'isha. So according to the Rabbanan who said previously that an isha was kosher, over here it's telling you ish l'isha. So lahachshir as a kohen and tor lahachshir as a cotton. And it says tor to machshir a cotton. So the Rabbanan who said previously that in the Kiddush they said that they said the case over there that a katan was possible and an isha was kshera. Here it says ish v'lo isha, and isha not. Tor as lahachsher as a katan. And they said that a katan was over there apostle. Here it's kosher. Well, Rav Yehuda, but Rav Yehuda says ish was ish v'lo katan. According to Rav Yehuda, it's the opposite. He says ish when he says previously a katan was kosher. Here ish v'lo katan, and tor lahachsher as isha, and tor previously where he said isha was psula. Here it's lahachsher. Except tumtum v'drogas v'isha, the katan sheyesh bo das isha mesayomazet, and a katan who has das, a woman can help him and he can be mazet. Now this over here it says the isha is not kshera, and it says over here by the katan and is kosher. V'loy polig Rav Yehuda. And Rav Yehuda doesn't argue with this. Now, according to Rav Yehuda, Rav Yehuda said, and he said a katan is possible and an isha is kshera. Now, over here, why doesn't he argue? Amar Abaye came with Amar Mar Mashma Maitzmiyad Mashma Mashma Mela Pali. He said, since we said before that the Torah is one pasuk is opposite, is referring to a different case of the previous pasuk. Sometimes it reverses to the previous pasuk, sometimes it doesn't. But since we have this klal, then we say Rav Yehuda, then we say therefore polig. That Rav Yehuda would argue in this case, even though he doesn't say it explicitly, but he would argue in this case because it's implied that since it is reverses the mashmos of the previous pasuk, the way he learned the previous pasuk, then this over here, this pasuk, it would be reversed. So therefore, it's implied, therefore, that he would argue on this case, even though the Mishnah doesn't say it explicitly.